Thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly draw your attention to two items. There's a beautiful speech here by Dr. Nie that's out here. It's the front and back, a speech he gave just 4 days ago to the annual commemoration of Vietnam Human Rights Day. So that's out there, and copies of the newspaper we know and love, the Epoch Times. So please get your paper and the speech when you can, and also review the bios in your folder. Some excellent, excellent bios there for folks that will be speaking at future events. And without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Frank Kaufmann.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank everybody for making your way here today and for committing a day here today. We're grateful. I feel guilty, like saying the same jokes again and again, David. You know, like we've heard each other's jokes too often because we're going around doing this. But David depresses me, and I'm thinking of stopping doing this. I don't like, you know. And the other thing about it is that it would be more easy to listen to if it didn't feel like you were describing yesterday, or, you know, like yesterday's newspaper. So this is the trouble, but we're here to try to put an end to this cycle, and his job is, David's job is to account for the precise nature and trajectory of the philosophies that are causing us harm or have caused untold harm, tens of millions of human deaths and more. And suffering beyond that. And so we're at a juncture now, and this is what we're here. So he gives us a pretty clear account of the exact internal nature of these philosophies, how they become ideologies, how they influence the harm to human beings. And my task is to look at a stream of counter-proposal, a better option, something that happens simultaneously during the same period of history, and how that might provide guidelines for us, for our own decision-making in the present day. So he spoke about the French Revolution. I'm going to speak about the Reformation and the American Revolution. I'm trying to change my language to the American War of Independence because it's a significant difference to me. So there's the French Revolution in response to human oppression, inequality, injustice, and there was the American War of Independence as another response. What are the differences in internal nature there? And of course, David spoke about the rise of Marxism, Leninism, communism, and I'm going to speak about what I call the American century, or God-centered Western civilization. And we'll see how a very simple philosophical option or difference creates entire massive global outcomes from the smallest point of decision. So the main point of our day together is simply to indicate that ideas have consequences. Simple criminality does not require philosophies or ideologies to cause human harm. But when you have mass systems, when you have genocide, when you have mass incarceration, when you have dystopic human events at a large social level, this is the result of philosophies and ideologies. So there's a very important difference to note about that. And I'm very grateful. One of the things to catch, please, is it's a special insight of David from philosophy that it needs to become an ideology. It's a very important thing, and this is, and as we stand, and as we talk to our friends, and as if we get on TV or make our presentations, this is an important thing to have. So I just mentioned this already. If you make the wrong decision philosophically, thought-wise, or ideologically, it results in mass totalitarianism, mass brutality, and genocide. A simple, proper, well-guided sense of response with the same degree of compassion and concern, a response to injustice and human inequality, can result in genuine, positive human progress, both in science and technology and greater freedom, greater equality, and social harmony, and human virtue. That's the binary. That's the dividing line. What causes progress? What causes things to improve? We already have access to ways of being that cause things to improve. And if we're looking for how to do this at a social level, we already have immediate access in our own lives. We know what works, we know what doesn't work. And as we're looking to work on the social level, to protect our own nation, for example, we already have intuition or insights for what works. I've put up a couple of slides of someone improving themselves in their physique and physically and in their health. A young lady studying for exams or papers or whatever it is. We know the quality of affairs that work. The reason why efforts to improve that work do so is because they're connected to the nature of reality. They're connected to the nature of reality because we ourselves are microcosms of reality. So if you could imagine just kind of like punching yourself in the face and think this is going to improve your circumstance. Do you see what I mean? So what we're arguing for or calling for is not some sort of like religious revival per se, just to be in touch with the common sense quality and nature of reality, which we have immediate access to. Ways that start off well-intended can end up in tyranny and widespread death. Both groups genuinely care. Both groups genuinely care. The problem is how you approach solving the problem well thought out? Is it a reasonable approach that will result in solving the problem, or will it result in the types of horrors that David was describing? Being able to identify early whether or not the decision is slightly off right at its starting point is like early cancer detection. And this is another reason why we're here today. We're trying to get our friends to have the capacity to start right at the start and spot when someone's saying, yeah, but there are oppressed classes in our urban cities, or their police are targeting this group or that, or something like that. You can't say you don't care. You can't say we care, you don't care. And that's how a lot of the political argument is going today, is to try to point out the hypocrisy of the left. And there's a lot of time spent saying we care, you don't care, and this is a sure way to lose the fight, lose the battle, lose time, just end up in incessant arguments online, arguing with strangers, trying to establish that we care and you don't care. And what we're trying to say is it's not the case that we care, you don't care. The case is whether or not your ideas and approach to addressing the genuine inequalities are effective or not. And we want the champions, the patriots, the warriors on the front line to be able to identify quickly when something is going to end up in, we don't need to wait for genocide. We want to be able to spot it early. So we need to move away from this habit of arguing online and finding every little hypocrisy, and then as proof that we're the people who care. That one must know the enemy well, and to say they don't care is a way to be defeated by them, because we've misidentified them. After we try to establish that, and it doesn't work because all of media's the agenda of trying to manipulate the narrative. That's all it is. The next thing that happens is we end up in hundreds and thousands of exhausting arguments about about when conception begins, when life begins, one about gender, one about race, one about immigration policy, and on and on and on, when it's far better to be able to establish a clear identification of where the error lies in its outcome. So we are action oriented. Everybody in this room is already leading something that's involved in trying to protect our country from harm. But this is just a half a day to kind of pause and look at the map. We need to get focused commitment. Our mission is not just to act. People say, why are you sitting in a room talking? We need to be out there acting. And the point is not to act, the point is to win. And so this is why we take time to at least look at the lay of the land. And this is why David takes time to explain the precise nature of what looks innocent at first. I mean, that didn't seem bad. Like Descartes' cogito, he was a religious guy, wasn't he? He was trying to help the cause of God, wasn't he? He did one tiny little thing, placed a human being above God as the home of certainty. So that's what I'm talking about, early cancer detection. So here's the basic premise. People should not be maltreated, burdened, or suffer. We all agree there. Whenever we see these things, we are moved to remedy the situation. That's human nature. The abuse of people in the late Middle Ages led to the French Revolution, and we saw what happened there. It ended up in the Reign of Terror. They were concerned about corrupt clergy exploiting religious needs. I'm not going to call it religious superstition. Exploiting the natural orientation of human beings to be religious. The corrupt clergy is exploiting that and creating serfdom, servitude, enslavement. And so the rise of the concerns of the French rationalists were to address maltreatment. And yet they led to the Reign of Terror. There was another side of responding to this, to the corruption of clergy, which was the Reformation movement. It was Reformation. So it isn't that religion itself is the problem. It isn't that, so you have corrupt clergy creating, working with corrupt aristocracy and creating human misery. And the French rationalists conclude that it's faith and religion and belief in God and God. That's the cause of human suffering. When rather the reformers identified corruption as the problem and sought to refine, to purify, to correct, to fix the religious situation. So why do we study the past as we do? The past provides two things. One, it provides a clear model of what we're facing today. That's one reason why we study the past. The other thing is we begin to see the roots of the philosophical and ideological threads that continue to operate. And when they begin in the French Revolution, or when they expand and gain strength during the Marxist Revolution, these ideas mature, they strengthen, they become more virulent. And so we study the past for these reasons. One, it's a model. Two, we get in touch with the ideas and we begin to recognize them. I think it happened to you, right? As David was describing ancient things, you're hearing exact things that you recognize being done today. So in the Middle Ages, human life was made miserable by both clerical and political corruption and inequality, and oppression from religious and political elite. It reached a breaking point. Is faith and religion the cause of human oppression, or is corrupt power of the elite the cause of the problem? That's the question. Because the problem, everybody agrees on. What is the cause of it is the issue. The French Enlightenment sought to replace religion, whereas the Reformation thinkers sought to repair religion, sought to repair faith. They didn't try to remove it, they intensified it. They took a number of steps to make access to a life of faith more immediate to the people. More religion, not less. This is the binary. I'm not talking about religion, it's faith or God or more of it, not less. So the distinction may seem small at first, but it's day and night. The point of divergence is simple. If religion goes bad, or if the world of faith goes bad, should it be destroyed and replaced, or should it be fixed? The whole matter of ideology revolves around this simple point. It's that simple. The single distinction which can tell you with certainty if the person before you would be at peace eliminating you. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Is the cause of human suffering religion? If the person in front of you holds that to be the case, at some point down the line, as we saw repeated twice, it results in the necessity to eliminate you if you stand in the way of the secular utopia that the rationalist or the Marxist or the materialist or the wokist, whoever is going to place themselves in charge of fixing society, you can be eliminated. If the person in front of you holds that reform, repair, that faith is a wholesome and healthy and uplifting part of human life, you can engage that person no matter how much they disagree with you. The French Revolution, they ended up in the worship of reason. The worship of reason. And so they came to understand, and what did you, I can't remember, you had the second point about a myth of human identity and cosmology. Basically, the thing that distinguishes a human being in a secular philosophy, like rationalism, is cognition. That's what makes us human, is our intellectual capacities, our intelligence. And that's why you'll find that ideologies of the left always find moral conservatives, constitutional conservatives, basic patriots. The main thing about you is that you're stupid. This is what you'll find, how you'll find conservatives described as stupid, no matter how smart. It's always your stupidity that's the problem. And so it originates in this idea of having the human beings, being human is grounded in your powers of cognition. Whereas on the side of reform, on the side of the view that faith is always needs to be purified, always needs to be kept clean, because this is where the human being develops properly and the society develops properly. Those people regard virtue, character, and moral law the measure of human life and leadership. Not how smart you are, how virtuous you are. It's a fundamental difference on whether or not your starting point is that human religious superstition is where human suffering originates. And then you will have to replace God, you'll have to replace the origin of all with something less than the origin of all. Reason, matter, it's something less, and try to build a system from there. It ends up, we see again and again, it ends up horribly. So for example, if you look at the view of, say, moral conservatives or patriots or people who care for our country, if they're looking at a person like a Representative Schiff, Adam Schiff, does anybody think of, do you hear from the right that he's stupid? Do you hear people saying he's stupid? You do not. Nobody cares whether he's smart or stupid. The problem is his moral character. The problem is he's a liar. That's the problem. But from the secular side, from the left side, you'll hear that conservative voters are stupid. Or Donald Trump is stupid, right? He's stupid, isn't he? So, and it comes from this French Enlightenment distinction of human beings as originating in the worship of reason. This is so it's a big decision to make. Is this issue of wherein lies the quality of being human? To conclude, Enlightenment thinkers attempted to solve inequality through humanist, God-removing philosophies and ideologies. The result was a barbaric, blood-soaked reign of terror. The reformers and God-side thinkers and writers did not seek to replace religion and faith, making ourselves higher than God, but instead they invested creatively to increase the spread of religious experience among the citizens, like the Vulgate, translating the Bible into the languages of the people, so that this bypassed the corrupt leaders. That's how you fixed it. Get the Word of God, the Scriptures, into the hands of the people. That was the Vulgate. And here's an image of the Gutenberg press. They could start to print the Bible off at affordable cost. And so everyone could have access and were not capable of being exploited by the corruption of religious leaders. So it's more faith, it's more religion. And then what happened as a result? What happened as a result of that track? You get all these reformers. Wycliffe was responsible for the translation of the Bible into English. That's how to get rid of corrupt leaders. Say, sorry, you're lying. I happen to have the text myself. Hus removed the sale of indulgences. This is the Reformation thinkers. Erasmus, he stayed in the Catholic Church. He pushed the Catholic orientation to focus on inner piety, not on the machinations of the priest to guarantee your salvation. Your own inner piety. Luther, the priesthood of all believers. It's my I have direct access to God. The Council of Trent addressed abuses within the church. That was also a Catholic phenomenon. Galileo, Catholic, stayed in the church. Even though he was opposed by the church, he fought the church. And he's part of the advent of the rise of genuine science, of real science. The English Civil War, parliamentary sovereignty. John Locke, natural rights, private property, separation of powers, the consent of the governed. All of these, which provided the foundation of the health and the nation that we live in today, all came from reformers, from deeply, more intensely religious people breaking out of a period of corruption, not deciding that faith itself is the cause of human suffering. Eventually, the reformers ended up coming to America for the sake of freedom of worship. And this led to the founding of the colonies, and the colonies eventually decided that the abusive and exploitive rule of Great Britain was unacceptable to the American way of life, American experience, and they fought a war of independence. Anybody who reads the history of the War of Independence, it's almost like you cry at every line on every page. You can't but see God in the victory of the American front line fighting the British. It's kind of better than the end of Star Wars. Do you know what I mean? Who could defeat the greatest military power in history? And there's more that I'll talk about in the American experiment, especially because they're here for the sake of faith. That's why they came here. They did not come here to get rich. All of the colonies, Penn, a multi-religious colony, all of the colonies came for the sake of the freedom of religious worship. The flowering of Western civilization and the birth of the world of hope, the shining city on a hill, the hope and promise to the world's tired, poor, and huddled masses, all began on this simple, original point of decision. lights, it's like a light switch, on, off. Is faith the problem, or is the corruption of the elite the problem? If the corruption of the elite is the problem, reform is the answer. If faith is the problem, then the replacement of God by something that will work better must be done. And that's where the revolutionaries always end up, like David said twice, what is the general will? I'll tell you what the general... Something has to represent that. Here's the first seed planted for what America is. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that you know the thing, that all men are created equal. The key I want to point out here is, A, the word self-evident. It's not something that needs to be argued. It's what's called axiomatic. Anything that's self-evident is called axiomatic. And the beauty of that is that it's not some like blind faith guy yelling and screaming from a pulpit. Created, that you're created. That's a piece of logic. You can't argue that. Is there anybody here who's not created? Do you see what I mean? It's a self-evident truth. It's called an axiom. And so the founding of this country is that all men are created equal and with certain inalienable rights. This is what I'm calling the binary, the on-off. Self-evident is known in philosophy as an axiom. Created equal with unalienable rights is not argued, it is not proven, it is self-evident. Without this, there's no America. Without this, there's no America. What then happens? And then all throughout the founding documents, we find the similar type of affirmation, the abiding by nature and nature's God. Here, the firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. People who are familiar with the documents, we mutually pledge to one another our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. Everything, everything. On what basis are they telling one another, looking one another in the eye, and pledging everything? Reliance on divine providence. And it's, as I'm saying, it's not religious faith. It's a self-evident axiom, created. It's that simple. What then happens as a result of the founding of the United States? What then happens as a result of this simple binary, this simple option? Oh, the poor and suffering, you don't really care. I care. I care, and I'm here to fix it. And this is how I choose to fix it. Whoever's interfering with the capacity of people to be in a direct personal relationship with the living God, I'm fixing it. I'm going to give everything, my life, my sacred honor, everything for that. Don't tell me I don't care. And I won't tell you you don't care. I'm just telling you that when you try other systems, we've tried two so far, they've ended up extremely badly. Look what happens among the people who have tried this path. You have the abolitionist movement. You have the women's rights movement. From the beginning of the founding of America, based on a reliance on the divine providence, on a surrender to nature and nature's God, to the affirmation that all men are created equal with unalienable rights. You have what we see when a simple, correct decision is made, like that slide I showed you of the girl studying or the guy in the weight room. So a simple, correct decision is made. That it's not a complicated decision. The best rise of human equality arises from that. Wesley, what's it? Against slavery. Sharp, against slavery. Wilberforce, the abolition of the slave trade. Clarkson, what's it? Abolitionist, end of slavery. All that came from that simple decision. It's innate to the affirmation that you're created, that we're created. People recognize this gentleman? This is John Newton. He wrote the Amazing Grace. He owned and ran a slave ship. And God took from his heart, or burdened his heart with what he was doing to human beings. And he wrote the greatest hymn ever. The greatest hymn ever. I was lost. It had to do with being in touch with the simple fact that all men are created equal. And that we have the most beautiful land and most beautiful country that has ever existed in the history of the world. And it grows out of nothing other than the exact same compassion, the exact same desire to fix the human situation, to remove inequality, only doing it in a way that has the capacity for the outcome you want, rather than the capacity for the hideous ugliness that David described in two prior occasions, the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution. And what we will get into this afternoon is that what we are facing right now makes Marxism look like a kid with a pellet gun. But we don't see it yet, and that's why we're talking about the early detection concept. The second thing David spoke about was the communism. And I want to do a quick similar thing on the parallel of the reasonable side, of the correct decision, of the better way to go. And so the counter movements I call the God-centered Western civilization, or the American century. Let's see what happens once again when we look at the twin rails and twin options and response to human inequality. Reform or repair, or revolution and removal. Okay, I've discussed that. At the end of the 19th century, the industrialists had created unthinkable human inequality. But it didn't exploit the need for faith. It exploited the need to survive. It exploited work. It exploited kind of the physical side of you. So during the time of the rationalist revolution, the people that were greatly responsible for human suffering were people who were exploiting the interior part of us, our belief. They were trying to take away our belief in the Lord, in the divine. By the time of the end of the 19th century, the exploitation of human beings was exploiting their work, their labor, their physicality, their body. And so the ideology was materialism, not rationalism. And so they're responding to the abuse of the inequality created by the robber barons, by the industrialists. And here again, same thing. You see the abuse. You see something that you can't, in good conscience, look away from or walk away from. We must respond. This is unacceptable. And then you get your options. You get either an intensification of a relationship with the origin of all, or you get that the structure or the organization of the divine is the problem and must be removed and must be replaced by something else. And so we pick one or the other, and we end up in one direction or another. In the Enlightenment, I mentioned this already. Now we are no longer facing a corrupt clergy. We are facing corrupt industrialists merging with the state, coercion to subjugate people through their physical needs. Same issue, annihilate or reform. Ideas, okay, annihilate or reform. The enemy now are those who control our physical survival, and so Marx comes up with a number of theories and ideologies that has to do with the matter of our physical life in the world. Most especially he comes up with Das Kapital and the labor theory of value. That's the origins of Marx's response to the abuse of workers. Once this is established, according as David pointed out, either you must be re-educated or you must be annihilated. These are your options. Once you have removed the source of the problem out into to whose side you belong, you had an exact quote on that. Just, what is it? Don't ask him whatever he's done or how he's been educated. Just ask him what class he belongs to. Either you have to be re-educated or annihilated. And this was the same now with the Marxist revolution. What the rationalists did was separate our faith orientation from God. Because the issue by the time Marx comes along is the physical exploitation of people, the exploitation of our work, of our labor, of our survival. What he does is separate, is redefine our relationship with nature. He redefines work. The whole thing has to do with matter, with nature, with the earth. And basically, what the rationalists made human reason higher than God, Marx makes matter higher than God and higher than human beings. We're the result of matter banging around. Did you know that? Just randomly, just matter's just doing what it does and produce you. Your eyesight, your love for your wife, the fact that you'll die for your kids, somehow matter. Even human beings are lower than matter because the issue had to deal with our physicality. And so on the issue of the rationalists, just our faith in the divine, that means when we die we'll go to heaven, but another part of the divine is the structure of our relationship with nature. Our physicality also has to do with our divine order and structure of things. And so when Marx reverses that, what he fundamentally does is disrupt the divine structure of how we're related to matter and nature. We're meant to live creatively and fruitfully in nature. That's how we survive. That's how we produce beautiful things. What is the ideal relationship between human beings and the things of physical reality, which we need to survive? What happens when corruption poisons that relationship? Abolish it and replace it, or reform? Same question, identical same question. But this time the problem is the greedy industrialists. And so there you have the program to what? Remove the capitalist class. Same thing, but rather than reform it. But what produces our survival, what our work produces, is glorious when it matches the natural order of the divine structure in human affairs. Harmonious independence. Marx redefined our harmonious interdependency with physical reality. Care for physical reality is a central part of being human. It's in every great spiritual tradition. It's in Genesis 1:28. Be fruitful, multiply, have a harmonious dominion over the earth, care for the earth. Care for physical reality is the higher form of environmentalism. It's a declaration of my divinity. The reason I care for the earth is because it's a humanitarian act. Contemporary environmentalism, which grows out of the strain of Marxism, has matter higher than us. We're actually in the way. Environmental, like green extremists, human beings are the problem. Even that you're breathing air is the problem. Everything, everything is higher than you. That's a direct outgrowth of the fundamentals of Marxist thought, in which matter created us. We care for the earth and all of nature as part of human compassion. We care for it because we care for one another. That's the divinely ordained relationship between human beings and nature. And this is where the whole issue of private property arises. The defense against Marxism has traditionally played on his turf. Oh, private property produces prosperity. Capitalism is a better economic system than socialism. Socialism undermines undermines human incentive and things, et cetera, et cetera. All this is true. The reason why it's true is because it's common sense. It matches reality. But a more profound confrontation of the issue of private property is not because it creates more prosperity. It's because that is the arena or canvas in which your humanness, your God-given humanness, is meant to manifest itself. That's why you can make jam out of the berries that grow on your thing and then give it to your neighbors. Or private property. Like, did anybody ever hear the Ten Commandments? Don't covet your neighbor's stuff, right? If that isn't private, how does your neighbor even have stuff? It's not an economic theory. It's the structure of. There's no way for you to show the fullness of your divinity if you don't have any private property. It's like, wow. It's like, how old is your car? It's 1998. You really take care of your car. It's incredible. I can't even. It feels brand new. This is you. It's you. So it's not an economic matter. It's the same issue. It's the same issue of divine of the faith and God and Creator, or something lesser. In this degree, matter, which is really lesser. Okay. Socialism should not be rejected solely based on economics. It separates us from nature and from reality. How could Marxism, which is so fundamentally wrong and responsible for global genocide, tens of millions of people, how can it still be argued for today? How can it still have adherents today? How is that even possible? I guess, if you look at like Chicago Cubs fans or something, you get an understanding of how people stick to things. No, I'm just teasing. I hope there's no I don't even know if that's a good analogy, but, people stick with things that don't work. But anyway, how can Marxism still have adherents today when its theory is evidently clearly wrong and its outcome is clearly wrong? There's two things that it did. One was that it appeals emotionally. It presents itself as something that cares for the suffering of people. It does. And I think we could do a better job of presenting ourselves as having greater compassion than that. I think, people of faith, yeah. The other thing is that Marx and Engels donned the artificial garb of science. The economic theory was treated as science. It was the way to be modern. In a way, it was the way to be cool. You're not like these religious flat earth believers, you're Snopes trial, believe the earth is 6,000 years. You're not like those backward people. Stupid. Your science is, you believe in science. And so those two things, and here's, science is true. I just want you to know that scientists know what they're talking about and can always be relied upon. Science and technology would come to be seen as the great fixers of human problems, not virtue, not compassion, patience, sacrifice, integrity. That doesn't solve human problems. Science and technology solves human problems. And so part of the Marxist appeal was the description of itself as a science. It's not in the least, honestly speaking. Science and technology would be, okay, what's that? Okay. Thoughtful people easily know that owners, oh, this is a leap. Okay, so emotional appeal, scientific appeal. These are the things which allow Marxism to persist. The greed and excess and inhumanity of the robber barons introduced the same divergent roads of how to respond to those that exploited and took advantage of the fact that we're meant to have private property, to show our divinity, to show our beauty, to show our creativity. Okay, so now I want to examine this issue of private property very briefly. Thoughtful people easily know that owners bear burdens, endure risk, invest in long, thankless hours needed to keep corporations alive, and provide countless people with the chance to earn an honest wage and support their families. The burden of ownership, the burden of management class, the burden of capitalist class, the burden of the economic elite is great. The problem is when they become corrupt, addicted, greedy, and inhumane, which results in human despair and alienation. That's the problem. Same problem that I described with the clergy and so forth. Once again, two possible reactions. One is violent revolution. Marx chooses violent revolution. Destroy and remove the bourgeoisie and capital class. Get rid of, and this results in removing all natural bases for creativity and development. Replace it with the absurd fantasy of collective ownership, which never happened, right, David, right? And without the ennobling dignity of private property. So these are the three core philosophical errors of Marxism: the labor theory of value, dialectical materialism, and historical materialism. I'll touch on these quickly. Labor theory of value. Here are 5 very well-known established proofs that Marx's labor theory is in error. One is that value is not inherent in the objects, but determined by the importance an individual places on the object. Okay? Get it? Get it. Yep? Okay. 2, utility. The value is not inherent in the object. It rests in the usefulness of a product to the consumer. That's where the value lies. So you put in all this labor, and therefore it has value. If it's not good, if nobody needs it, nobody wants it. If it's not useful, if it don't work. I don't care how much labor you put into it. If it don't work. Technological change. Technological advancements can change the amount of labor required to create an item. Again, you can have a much better item that has sucked out much less labor. And it's human creativity that produces the technology which produces the finer objects or the more abundant objects. And then difficulty in measuring labor, skills, productivity levels, and technological assistance. Okay, so here's the labor theory of value, which at every single turn is denied by straight common sense. Here it is. Humans determine value. Humans determine value. Human creativity in each and every case. So the Marx thing has the item, the physical matter. That's why it's materialist. Is where the value lies. And all we do is just grunt, and like now it has value because I put in X hours. And it's exactly the opposite is the case. And that's called science. And that's called science. So value does not rest in matter. This worship of science and putting matter above human beings is what contributes to the nature of the green extremism and ecological terrorism today, because the human being is the problem. This is another outcome of the worship of matter and science. Oh, there's a picture of science itself. The same worship of science that enchanted Marxists also led to the mass violation of citizens' rights during the unconstitutional government lockdowns and criminal government-directed censorship of free speech. Okay, it all due from the worship of science. And we're wondering, how did this happen? How did this happen? Now we're learning today some of the exact quality of the nature of the roots of how that happened. By God's grace, Marxism gets toppled in the early 90s. The Soviet Union and militant atheism was defeated politically and militarily during the Reagan era. So that critique won. The faith side won. The America built by the people of faith won. They won. Yet somehow or another, there are still a couple of Marxist backwaters in the world today. The CCP and tenured Marxist professors that teach your children like crazy everything you wanted to study. Math, dance, English. It's all Marxism. What did I say? Career Marxists. All right. The other two errors. So I touched on the labor theory of value. The other two errors, dialectical materialism and historical materialism. Dialectical materialism is a discussion of ontology or philosophy or ground of being. So it's philosophical. Historical materialism is a discussion of how history unfolds. So how things are and how they progress. All right? We all have that. We all are and we all progress. And Marxist theory addresses both. The dialectic is basically summarized in the Marxist teaching and understanding of thesis, antithesis, againstness, and synthesis. So againstness goes against the originator, and that energy produces a synthesis, a new thing. And that's how existence is in the world. Historical materialism is the same thing horizontally or progressively. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, progress. The problem with, of course, this is all of Marxism. This is the basis of Marxism. Dialectical materialism, historical materialism. And it's grounded in the basic structure that conflict is the generating thing, the antithesis. In divine thought, in the God option, in the faith option, on the religious side option, it's the precise opposite. Harmony. Harmony is the fundamental assumption of how things are and how things progress. The dialectic conflict is the fundamental assumption of how things are and how things progress. So look at yourself. Are you a symphony of just things working against each other? Like your eyes or your gut or your heart or your... You are a symphony of harmony. Everything on the divine side option, of the common sense option, of the created equal option is a declaration of harmony. And everything on the Marxist solution to inequality is grounded in a declaration of conflict, dialectical materialism. And so you say, well, what about BLM? What about the riots of 2020? I thought we were supposed to be locked down. That's hypocritical. It's not hypocritical. It's conflict. It's why are you allowing riots? Why do you riot? Why are you painting? Why are you destroying Picasso's? Because conflict is the ontology of Marxist thought. It's nature. Scriptures and nature itself, the birds, the bees, the planets, the stars, are the story of love, harmony, and symbiosis. While Marx asserts that the existence itself is conflict and violence, world faiths affirm the exact opposite. Religion and faith call people to seek harmony, understanding, forgiveness, grace, mercy, embrace, and patience. It's that simple. You have a problem? Try those. You have a problem? Try a violent riot. That should solve it. Kill a cop. That should solve the problem. Or try the natural extension of what is self-evident. And our founders and framers knew that. Harmony, understanding, forgiveness. Forgiveness, that could solve a billion things. Grace, mercy, etc. People of faith who lived in simple, obvious, common sense observation that the earth and people are created. That neither nature nor human beings have the power or ability to create ourselves. This simple common sense observation is the beginning of faith, the beginning of human-heartedness that always brings about greater equality, greater opportunity, and after all, isn't that what all these secular revolutions are about? And yet the exact opposite. So let's see, just as I did on the last slide, what happens, what the faith side people did while the Soviet Union and the CCP are killing tens of millions of people. Martin Luther King, racial equality. Dorothy Day, women's rights. Joshua Heschel, human rights. Ralph Abernathy, racial equality. Shuttlesworth, Lawson, civil rights movement, etc., etc. Joachim Prince, civil rights movement. During this same period of time, the United States of America was progressing under the influence of people of faith. I don't care whether they ever went to church or not. They just made the simple common sense decision that the framers spotted as an axiom, self-evident. All men are created equal, and produced the single most rapid ascent in human equality in human history just by founding a nation on one simple axiom. Women's rights, suffragettes, voting rights, social activists. This is a mostly peaceful protest, and we'll be hearing more about this same battle and this same binary and this same divergent pair of options. Today, it's an emergency time, and we'll do the same pattern after lunch as we did this morning. David's will depress you, and I'll try to give us hope. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
We'd like to take a moment for Q&A if you have any questions that you'd like to raise for both Dr. Kaufmann and Dr. Burgess. Please feel free at this point, and then we'll break into a little group discussion and share a bit in groups.
Carl, you're gonna, you want to call us?
How do we do it? Just yell out?
Yeah, you raise your hand, please, Adele, and
Okay, I have one question related to the reality of what we're experiencing in our country and how we can apply all that we've learned here today. Was Thomas Jefferson wrong when he said that the tree of freedom must be fed by the blood of patriots and tyrants from time to time? Is bloodshed something that is in the future as a result of what's going on in our country now? He said must. He didn't say could. But I'm just wondering what your thinking is.
You gave me the hard question. He's in there. Anyway, I think that there might be truth in that. There might be truth in a must. I think the question is how quickly or successfully one can rally around a community that gets in the way of making it any bigger, to keep it down. If you could keep it down to 1 or keep it down to 5. We've already lost how many people to suicide from the J6 tourists? How many? 5? Blood has been shed. So it's possible there's a must. But the point is, we've got kids and grandkids. You know, can we stop it there? Or that's somehow my response off the cuff. Adele, thanks for the question. David, yeah?
Yeah, just I would say as a last resort, it may be necessary, right? But hopefully we wise up and prevent that from having to be the case, right? If we don't confront it up front, we'll confront it later, and it'll be more dangerous. So, I think he was talking about just the absolute, conviction and response that, not over my dead body kind of thing, right? So, anyway, that's my understanding.
Thank you. Dr. Burgess, Dr. Kaufmann, fantastic presentation. Thank you. I'd like to hear your thoughts, if I may, about what I'm thinking is one of the existential crises that we're facing among all the others that you've directed us to today, and that is artificial intelligence, the use of machine learning to censor at scale, to surveil, to scoop up all your data. In context of your comments about science and technology, which is earlier about, the fixer of society, and hence this market society and this materialistic view of Marxism, and then, of course, further strains. Could you help us apply some of your reasoning? How do you approach this issue of Deus ex machina, the God in the machine now that so many in the science and technology world are applying to mass surveillance, to keeping people oppressed, many people oppressed, as we well know in communist China? If you could, thank you.
Great question. This is the answer that if I'm in the audience, I hate anybody answering me like this, but we cover exactly that this afternoon. So, or just wait. It's the answer I like least, but we do take that up if we can wait till afternoon, because it's a great question and it's really all important.
I'm from Cuba, and you see, one of the things that I like to make some emphasis on that, it's about the way that socialist people, assault the constitutional power of the people, We sometimes talk, this is what they do, this is what they do. No, they assault. In Cuba, we see that, how they assault the political power, in the country, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and it is not something friendly what they do. They do a real assault. And what happened in the election here in America with President Trump, you can go to Pennsylvania and pay attention you can go to Georgia and pay attention, exactly the same thing, you know? And for that reason, what he said, you know, it's really interesting, you know, because if people continue, you know, quiet, they don't say nothing, they're afraid, it's really complicated, you know? It's gonna be more ugly.
Thank you, yes, agreed. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, quick question. So I kind of live in a liberal left-wing blast zone, which some days is kind of fun, some days it's really usually tedious. And one thing that I have found, whether I'm interacting on radio or TV or in a public debate or whatever, they just don't even know what they believe. They literally don't know what they believe. So I take a Tucker Carlson approach a lot, which is ask them a question, and that usually stops the debate right there. But it's more important than being flipped like that. They really don't know what they believe. So do you have any suggestions or thoughts, when you speak, particularly when you're speaking to younger people who are utterly clueless, they just care about, you know, the polar bears or whatever. Any thoughts at all, like how do you break through that? Like how do you, in simple terms, you know, sort of break through that?
That's such a great question. No, I love that. I love that question. Maybe again, you know, we're hearing these for the first time. You try to think on your feet and try to get it right, but maybe a version of this simple kind of options that we've presented and leaving in place or leaving intact care as a universally held starting point, so that I think if they imagine conservatives as people who actually care about anything, they might listen for a moment and then maybe a question or two. Usually the people who are questioning are clever or gotcha-ish or something like Charlie Kirk. He's itching for a fight, you know, or a clip, you know. But possibly questions that are not meant to make you look dumb, but in the common space of we do care about these matters. Let's see the steps that might work, might not work. Let's see if they've been tried before. Something like that, I'm guessing. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit this afternoon about the kind of confusing nature of what we're currently facing. And I kind of agree with Frank on this one. I think it's incumbent on us to have, you know, we don't have to have all the answers, but I think it is important that we be able to point to positive things that we're doing to help, you know, address their concerns, right? And have options so that it doesn't have to go down this road of canceling people and whatever else they have in mind. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Are we?
We have just a couple of short ones, maybe George and then Ben. And then one of the great things about these meetings is the small groups we're trying to preserve the time for. They really are fruitful. So we're not trying to cut off questions, but get quick to letting these groups go because they're really part of the best part of the day. George?
More than a question, it's just a comment. I have to deal with kids all the time, and one of the things that I find works is always find out what they care about. So it's like when you said, you know, you make a decision which way you're going to go. Pretty much is your heart that decides which way you're going to go, not necessarily your mind. So if I know that, you know, the opposition is trying to put it on an emotional thing, my answer is, okay, what do you care about? So to the kid, I say, well, you know, you care about your computer, right? When you're playing the video game, what do you want to do, smash it against the wall, or you want to try to fix it, or help you fix it? So if you let people be slaves of their emotional responses, most of the time, that's what you're going to have, violence.
Thanks, that's very good. Appreciate that.
I have one more thing, but I'll talk to you personally about it.
I just got a comment. You probably all know, y'all conservative. I speak quick, I'll say it quick. Everybody's seen that Kansas City kicker and the Pope. They had 2 interviews, and the Kansas City kicker was more Catholic than the Pope. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. It was like one
He's running for a new office.
He finally made that phrase come to life. More Catholic than the Pope. But these days it's not that hard. Maybe we can take Ben real quick.
Just actually, I like the whole talk at the workers' point where the workers were suffering. It wasn't a clear bridge. They became unions, and then even Reagan was a union man. And he says the Democrat Party left me. I didn't leave the Democrat Party, meaning that they were helping the workers, helping the common man, and then all of a sudden it became a corrupt thing within itself. So I don't know if I'm answering my own question, but
Pretty much, but it is true that the capitalist system has done more for workers than, any Marxist system has ever done. Right? So, interestingly enough.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to break into groups for discussion and have a bit of discussion among ourselves, 5-10 minutes, and then we'll hear a couple of reports from your groups. So,
I think there's a question. Did we have that? No, I didn't give it to you, right?
No.
Like, we thought the groups, like, you can talk about anything you want, but one possible way is what are similar about the French and Russian revolutions? What are different about them? And also, do the counter proposals, what are good about them, what could be improved about them, something like that, all right? And then the other thing is to make your group just turn your chairs around, just hook up easy, and so that we don't have to go places.
sure.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank.